Good afternoon. There are seats still available in the front of the room, so if you would like to come down front, please do. We'd like to welcome you to VCU's President's Town Hall meeting on diversity and inclusion. Your time and participation are appreciated, and your engagement will be welcome today during this town hall meeting. Hashtag VCU Town Hall is the hashtag available for you to ask questions of our president and others in the audience today. So that's hashtag VCU Town Hall, hashtag VCU Town Hall. Advancing diversity and inclusion in higher education requires more than institutional will to engage the work. It requires strategic visioning and leadership that is transformative and positions a university like VCU to be a leader in a competitive higher education and environment. This process also takes time, and then we are taking the time that we need and being strategic and deliberate about the process. As we watch television, read the news, observe human interaction, we realize that real diversity and inclusion requires transparency, integration, and engagement with people who are maybe different from us. It requires us to engage with people who have different perspectives, cultures, experiences, and worldviews. Commitment and action are critical to, I think, advancing the needle for diversity. Commitment and action to advance diversity requires courage, leadership, openness to being deliberate, intentional, and accountable to moving the needle or to advancing the climate and advancing compositional diversity. As a university, leaders must create environments where hate, prejudice, intolerance, and singular views are not acceptable. They are unacceptable, and we feel that that is the case here at VCU. Embracing or having a willingness to consider multiple views are key to our society and our success at VCU. So if we want to be a more diverse university and have a diverse landscape, it should include more professors of color. When we look at the National Center for Education, the 2011 statistics, it says 79% of college educators in post-secondary education are white, 6% are black, and 4% are Hispanic. The number, when you look at tenured professors, they're even more humbling. We need more women in leadership positions. Currently, there are about 26% of women who are leading colleges and universities. More students with disabilities, more inclusive LGBT initiatives, more religious diversity, and other aspects of diversity. In order to have the level of diversity we truly want at VCU, we need to recognize the areas of need and to move towards improvement in that area. President Rao, and that's why we're here today, he sent a letter to the VCU community reaffirming his commitment to the university and inclusive excellence here at the university. Not only did he send the letter, he challenged his cabinet to assess our areas and to develop strategic actions to enhance inclusive recruitment, retention, professional development, and climate. President Rao also charged a task force to look at innovative strategies for increasing the underrepresented students from high schools in enrolling here at VCU. Members of the President Cabinet are here this afternoon to demonstrate their commitment and their commitment to our core value of diversity, inclusion, and equity. And would they stand at this time and be recognized, our President's Cabinet members? Let's give them a hand. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The issues that we are confronting in the 21st century higher education are as complex and diverse as the communities represented here today in this room and on our campuses. But the efforts we make today and in the future will mean more for creating an inclusive university atmosphere for us in decades to come, and it will also help us diversify our American workforce. And when we look at data, it says that for the US children, minorities will be the majority by 2020, based on the US Census. So now it is our opportunity to hear from our president. It is my pleasure to introduce VCU's fifth president, Dr. Michael Rao. President Rao has been a champion for diversity throughout his career in higher education. And I can tell you, when I go to national conferences and they talk about our president and what he did at Central Michigan and other institutions, it really makes me proud. I'm appreciative of his commitment, but more important, I'm appreciative of his actions to bring about change in campus climate, leadership, student, faculty, and staff diversity. He sees diversity as a hallmark here at VCU. And diversity is who we are, what we are, but more importantly, it is what we aspire to become better at. So without further comments, would you welcome President Michael Rao?
Thank you, Wanda. Good afternoon. What an impressive turnout. I'm so glad that all of you are here, and I'm grateful to you for taking the time, making the time to be here. I'm glad that the weather cooperated this time too. We had a session set and then we had to make a change because of the weather, and wanted to be certain that we could actually get folks to be here and to be a part of this conversation. To me, diversity is such an important topic at this institution. As I think back on when I came and was thinking about coming to Virginia Commonwealth University, one of the things that was most impressive to me, one of the things that really drew me to VCU, is the same thing that I think is so important to so many of our students, and which also draws so many of our students and so many members of our faculty and our staff to VCU as well. And that is that there are so many people who bring so much to the table because of the differences that they bring as human beings to life. And so I really do believe that it's fundamental to our mission. I'm very proud that when I sit with research university presidents throughout the United States, that I look at their numbers and I look at our numbers, and I'm really pleased with the extent to which we are so much more visibly diverse than so many of the institutions out there. If you think about universities in our history, it's really interesting. It was not very long ago that you could easily say that the vast majority of major inventions, innovations, creations, things that really made a difference in what we know to be human life were coming from universities. And most of those still are. And it's really important for us to continue along along those same lines. But if you think about what I just said, how much more important is it to ensure that you have diverse perspectives around the tables where we talk about what needs to come next? It's really, really important. It's absolutely essential. And the conversation is absolutely essential, because understanding human beings, many of whom have differences, more and more of whom will have differences, is a really complex conversation. Let's just face it, it's oftentimes not an easy conversation. But I want to tell you something that I say oftentimes, and I want to say it to you. When you can get there, though, in the middle of that conversation, you begin to understand that it is probably one of the most rewarding experiences that you can have as a human being. I don't think it is fulfilling a life, is fulfilling a human experience if you don't have the opportunity to be a part of that quote-unquote challenging conversation. It is necessarily challenging, and that is exactly what research universities stand for. Engaging in conversations that may not be so easy to be a part of, that may not be so easy to get engaged with. You know, people, as I listen to people talk in different corners, and I see lots of people, it's interesting to watch them. They all collect based on their interests in common, and that's okay. And that's human to do that. But if you do so much of that you don't get an opportunity to be exposed to, or to be challenged by, or to be a part of conversations that aren't so comfortable for you, I'm not sure it's as fulfilling as it should be, a life of a human being. And so society needs universities to really be an important part of these conversations and to be very honest about them. That's another part that's very difficult, is to have an honest conversation. We really need to foster an understanding of the real benefits of diversity, the real benefits of our opportunities that come from different people who bring different aspects to the table. You know, I was thinking about a survey that UCLA has done for years. They started it out, I think, in the mid-'70s, and in 1975, the survey showed that 3/4, 75% of freshmen were going to college to develop a meaningful philosophy for life. And then 20 years later, in 1995, that same survey was repeated and showed that 75% of students were actually going to college to gain access to economic success, the new economy, as they said at that time. Well, it's interesting that whichever your perspective is, diversity is going to be a really important part of that college experience. And that's one of the reasons that I think it's important for VCU to exercise its prerogative to be a diverse learning environment, to be an environment in which we recognize that all of us are part of the learning experience. And for that reason, it's one of the reasons that we value our diversity. It's one of the reasons that we are committed to continuing to advance our diversity. We know that diversity absolutely has a relationship to excellence. There's no question that the greater inclusion that you have, the more that you are committed to excellence and the more that you will experience excellence. Study after study shows this. If you have everyone's commitment and perspective to solving a problem, your chances of solving that problem are much, much greater. So let me talk a little bit about VCU. All of you here, as far as I know, are members of the Virginia Commonwealth University community. Is there anyone who's not? It's okay if you're not, but no one's raised their hand, so I'm glad that you are. And I want you to know that from my perspective, when you become a part of Virginia Commonwealth University, one of the things that I count on you to sign on for is to be a leader in the commitment to diversity. Results absolutely matter. There's no question that we need everybody to be involved in everything that we are doing. So I'm actually looking to literally 23,000 people who are members of the faculty and staff at Virginia Commonwealth University to be a part of ensuring that the learning experience for us as a faculty and staff, but also that the experiences that our students have are without question enhanced by our commitment to diversity. And so I'm looking to you for that support. In recent months, we have, well, it's been more than months now, we have been engaged in a number of initiatives to try and advance diversity, or I should say to accelerate diversity. One is the Wanda Mitchell-Jean Trani Task Force, and Wanda, thank you for your support there. And at some point today, my guess is that you'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit about what you're doing in terms of helping us to find ways to increase diversity among our student population, and in particular to take advantage of populations that are here but have not yet engaged at the levels that we wish. And then I think it was maybe a month ago, did we do the State of the University address or so in the room over here? I announced to you that it would be optional for students to take the SAT. They have to let us know, of course, whether they are going to submit the SAT or not. And of course, when they don't submit the SAT, we're looking for other ways to ensure that the student is someone who will succeed at Virginia Commonwealth University. And we may be able to talk a little bit more about that as well. And I can just tell you from my conversations with our strategic enrollment management folks that what we are doing at Virginia Commonwealth University in many ways exceeds what a lot of private institutions are doing, and with fewer resources. We are interviewing, talking to, face-to-face, an enormous number of students. Students who are not entirely sure of whether or not we have the fit or whether or not we can make certain they are successful, because ultimately you want to turn a student on and be certain that they can graduate, not turn them off to higher education, not allow them to be lost. We want them to be successful. And so we are looking at a number of ways in order to be sure that they can be successful. And in addition to an essay, we're also doing supplemental essays, and we read them all, by the way. We read all of them. And the we is a lot of people, many of whom do not have the title admissions in their title, or the word admissions in their title. A lot of people at VCU are committed to being certain that this is a diverse institution with the widest range of human perspectives that we can bring to the student population, because that's a part of the learning experience as well. It's a part of my learning experience. It's a part of your learning experience. It's important. As we gear up for this campaign, that is our fundraising campaign for Virginia Commonwealth University, a very important part of what we do to help ensure that we can be a diverse community. We're, of course, focusing on diversity in that as well, with respect to assistance for our students and with respect to endowments and support for our faculty members and our staff, to help ensure that we have the kind of recruitment processes that we can, in which we're able to bring diverse people to the table. And then, of course, you've got to keep folks once you are able to recruit them as well. GPI, Great Place Initiative, all about the climate. It's a very important part as well of what we're doing with respect to trying to advance diversity. Wanda mentioned earlier my charge that I issued on December 3rd to the vice presidents, particularly to the provost and the health sciences vice president, and to Wanda as inclusive excellence vice president, specifically identified a number of ways in which I am looking specifically to their leadership to help ensure that we know what we need to know in order to be sure that we are as successful as we can be in recruitment, in retention, and of course in professional development, which speaks again to our climate to some extent, but we have a lot of work to do in all of these areas, and we know it. And I want to tell you that I'm looking forward to the report. Wanda reported to me this morning that she is putting this all together with her leadership, and she expects that sometime in April, I hope I haven't put you under the, well, I hope I have put you under the gun, actually, that she will have an inclusive report of all of these items that I identified in my charge to our vice presidents, and I'm looking forward to that. Now that will probably take effect and start to work its way through the organization, but I have to tell you that this cannot be top down. It all has to come from right here. It has to be in your heart. It has to be a commitment that you make. So I'm going to ask you to think about a number of things. I want everyone in this community, and I ask you to be as diplomatic and civil and thoughtful about this as possible. I want you all to speak up. I want all the people who aren't here to also be a part of speaking up. And I want you to be a part of the VCU team in its commitment to diversity and our embrace of all human beings. And I mean all human beings. All human beings. I'm not just talking about certain kinds of human beings. I'm talking about all human beings. All human beings who have feelings. Because ultimately that's what matters, to me anyway. And I hope it matters to you. If you are on a search committee, or you are an appointing authority, or you are chair of a search committee, I want you to see yourselves as not a member of a committee. I want you to see yourselves, importantly, as responsible members of the Virginia Commonwealth University community. As a responsible member of the Virginia Commonwealth University community, you have an enormous responsibility. You are empowered. You are not sitting there just to be a part of groupthink. You are not sitting there to just simply check off a box. I served on that search committee, and then we hired so-and-so. I want you to be a very thoughtful part of that committee. Because ultimately, you know what this is really all about? If we really want to become more diverse, particularly when we hire faculty and staff members, it's about tapping into a network, and it's hard. It's not easy. Tapping into a network of successful people who are perhaps of a particular strength that they bring to the university. And how do you tap into that? Well, if you all look at each other from across the table, a search committee, and none of you know any more than the others, then we're in trouble. If none of you know how to do that, we're in trouble. Putting an ad in the newspaper, or in any paper, or online any place, I guess I dated myself, but you know what I'm saying. Screaming out loud that you have a position might work, but only if you're screaming it in the right circles. You've got to be thoughtful. It's hard work. And a lot of the times when you're looking for diverse contributions to the institution, it's a very small circle of people. You challenge yourself just like our team did yesterday when they won the A10 tournament, that you're going to win. We are going to get a diverse person in that pool, and we are going to do everything we can to hire. I hope you clapped for yourselves in the search committees as well as you did the team, although the team will appreciate it. So with that, listen, let me engage with you in conversation and talk with you about what's on your minds. So what you do with this is you raise your hand when you have a comment or a question. And Alan's coming forward. Okay. Or I guess you don't raise your hand. You come up to the microphone. All right. Very good.
Gee, when the president knows me by my first name, I'm wondering if I'm participating too much. Okay, a case in point. About 2 weeks ago, I received an email from a colleague of mine. I've known her for years. She's in my field of information systems. And she wants to move. She's well qualified. She happens to be African American.
Great.
And she's tenured where she is. What should I do now with her request?
I can always count on Alan to just toss it right out there. And so, you know, as you can tell, I'm passionate, but I am not always the most perfect process person. So what I want to do is I want to look to the provost's office to now talk about what to do in order to keep track of this opportunity that we have. And so Gail is deferred to John. She figures out he's leaving anyway, so.
I'll sit down.
So this is a great question because it points to an opportunity for improvement here at the university. This has been brought up by the deans as well. When we have opportunities, very high profile individuals, high impact, and this runs the gamut. You may have National Academy members that come to us, express interest. We don't have a process to vet them, qualify them, say that this is a good person, they would satisfy any search committee criteria, and we want to go ahead and make a direct hire. So we are working on putting together what we call impact hire process and practice. We've been working already a little bit with our university council on how we might be able to do that. Putting that process in place is, I think, very important for us to be able to react to opportunities like Alan has had pointed out. So, but do we have one right now? No. And so right now what we need to do is to go through a formal search process, national search, and try to link that person to a search that's going. We'll try to accelerate that and get that in place soon. I don't know if we'll be able to deal with this individual, but in the long run.
I'll send you her resume anyway.
Okay. Great.
John, to what extent is what we're talking about, Alan's good question, a part of the sort of focus on the charge that I issued around identifying people who we want to be a part of VCU?
You made it clear in the charge that you wanted a plan, not just numbers and
Right,
metrics.
absolutely.
And so part of a plan is to position us to react to these opportunities. And so some of that speaks to resources. How do you identify resources and resource that? But even a larger part of that, I think, is putting in processes and policies that keep us in compliance with regulations and laws, and minimize our exposure to lawsuits, et cetera, but allow us to react to these things and to vet these individuals, make sure that they're appropriately qualified. So.
Thank you, John. And congratulations, John. I got to be one of John's references for the University of Idaho, and it just slipped out. I said, you can't go wrong, but in any case, as disappointed as I am that we'll lose you to the community, I'm grateful to you and very happy for you. Yeah, you'll do a great job. Thanks.
President Rao.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
President Rao, I'm Dr. Clarence Thomas. I'm an associate professor in the Robertson School of Media and Culture.
Yes, sir.
I'm in my 25th year at VCU.
Yes, sir.
I am the first and only African American to be tenured in my field at VCU. Now that's not a bragging point. No, it's not a bragging point. The point is, it's 2015 and I'm the first and only African American to only be tenured in my department at VCU. And my question basically goes to this point. Over my 25 years at VCU, I participated in numerous studies, panels, and so forth on diversity, initiatives in diversity, and I've pretty much come away with the idea that VCU has done an excellent job at studying these things, but in the long run, the number of African American faculty is just not there, and in some cases going down. And so I'd like to get some idea from you and your cabinet as to how we tie this notion of making it real
Yep.
into the idea of all these studies and then actually seeing results after the studies. So in other words, what's going to be different now from all the studies that have happened over the years that were filed away and then another committee picks it up and does the same thing and files it away? I congratulate you on your intent. I congratulate you on the diversity of the student body. It is just fantastic. But in terms of our faculty, as you know, our faculty is not really diverse. It's not reflecting what we want. So how do we translate making it real into beyond these studies and into actually something that is tangible where we're seeing the numbers go up in terms of our faculty?
And thank you. And thanks for, you had written me as well,
Yes.
and I really appreciated your note, and I had a chance to think about that as well in the context of my charge. And so what you described is at the center of my charge. And so we even said, I think I was probably pressuring Kevin, who's my senior assistant in the back, saying, so when is this due? And he said, March 1, but you know, the bottom line is, I don't want it to come to me until it can be made real. Because ultimately, it's going to be the results. What I said is, the results, the outcomes are going to be ultimately what's most important. You know, I don't know, Dr. Thomas, about all of the other studies that are out there, but whatever might be out there that could be of any use to mobilize this, maybe we could use it. But I don't want to focus as much on the studies as I want to focus on which are the very best practices and which will get us, which small number of initiatives will get us the biggest and most important result base that we need in a very short period of time. And so ultimately, I'm in the same boat with you. I think it's very frustrating that we have your situation, for an example. I don't know how that could be. I really don't know how it could be. But something is stopping us as an institution, or something is not happening that needs to happen as an institution to be in a spot where we are not now. And we can't be in the same place. We simply cannot be in the same place a couple of years from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And while we have population demographics on our side, you know, on the other hand, we need to be certain that we have the mechanisms to be certain that we're leveraging these networks of folks that are out there who can be a part of our community. So when I get the study, the comprehensive plan, I should say, and I do want it to be comprehensive. I really don't want to do one-offs. I don't want to do, we've done some of that, but I don't want to do one-offs where we say, okay, let's focus our attention right now on these folks that we, you know, happen to have in a pool, and just, we've done some of that, but in the long run, it has to be a comprehensive plan, and it has to address all of the ways in which we do business now, whether it's search committees, whether it's hiring authorities, whether it's chairs, whether it's the processes. The very same processes that probably are in place that were designed to help ensure a commitment to diversity may not be all of the same ways in which we get to diversity today. So I'm concerned about all of what I've just described. I don't have solutions yet, but that's why I have a team. And I have faith that this team understands how important this is to me. I mean, how often as president do you get to choose how many things you will have a university forum on? You don't get to choose to do many of those, right? For a lot of different reasons. This one I chose. I chose because I am deeply concerned about this issue. And your note to me was one of the notes that made the biggest difference in my sort of realization that this is unbelievable. And by the way, one of the reasons it is so unbelievable to me is because I know a lot of your students, and I know how diverse they are. And here in media and culture, you have an enormous number of diverse students, and it's great, but you don't have the diversity you need otherwise in terms of faculty. And I want that. I do want that. So I'm committed to it. It's coming from here, but I'm trying to translate it from here to here to here. Here. You know, and say to the team, we need to do everything that we possibly can. But again, the other part of what I said to you earlier is it's got to be all of us, not just a top-down initiative.
Thank you,
Great.
sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Ashley. I'm a first-year
Ashley.
counseling doctoral student.
Yes, ma'am.
And my name is Tanisha. I'm a second-year PhD student in developmental psychology. And Ashley and I are also the president and the vice president of the Black Graduate Student Association that was just started this semester. And so we heard you talk a little bit about efforts to recruit undergraduate students of diversity here to VCU, but we're really concerned with graduate student recruitment and also retention because one, we feel that it gives an opportunity for undergraduates to know that applying to and attending graduate school is an option, and also that if there are no graduate students here receiving higher degrees, then there are no faculty members to recruit for your selection committee.
Right.
So we're interested in what efforts are being made to recruit and retain graduate students, and also, if available, how can we be supported in our efforts to do the same as well as an organization?
Okay, excellent. Very, very good question. And it's important for you to put graduate studies up on the radar. So let's just put it all up. Let's also put professional students who are going for programs like the MD, the DDS, the DPT, so on and so forth. So we have a large number of professional programs as well. We have the undergraduate students. And graduate students, we're really obviously targeting more PhD students now than we've ever targeted. We want to be sure. And you're absolutely right. That is the feeder into that becomes the next faculty. And so one thing I do know in asking the question myself is that a lot of the answers that I get back are so much of what's happening in terms of graduate education is happening within the specific program itself. But I do think that the university has the obligation, not just the right, but the obligation to ensure that there are some principles that are followed as an institution to try to promote the kind of diversity that we embrace. And so, Gail, I'm going to look at you again. There's, you know, Doug is here. And Doug, so one of the things we talked about when I first came 6 years ago is our concern around the value of stipends and how the stipends weren't, frankly, large enough for us to attract as diverse a student population as we wanted to in graduate studies. But then, how do we get over it? So I want to augment the question that was asked with, how do we deal with an institution in which we're trying to respect expertise faculty by faculty by faculty, depending on the area and discipline, and knowing that we need to lean on their judgment to make decisions for those areas, including about graduate students, with the fact that we are still a university. We are one entity. We're Virginia Commonwealth University. From my podium, I say we're committed to diversity. I'm committed to diversity. I've committed that my team is committed to diversity. How does that then play out at the graduate student level?
Well, for one thing, we do have a recruiter in graduate admissions that focuses largely on recruiting underrepresented students. Friday, I was at the University of Maryland and at the McNair conference. I was asked to be a panelist to talk about graduate school, to talk about the admissions process, and really to recruit some of these students. And Joy Rush, our recruiter for graduate students, was there as well. So we do have things in place to recruit students, underrepresented students. Got a little bit of allergies here, so if you can excuse me. As Dr. Rao said, we really increased our stipends. We, in 10 years, doubled the level of our stipends. And that's to recruit the best students we can. And I think it's working well.
Has that helped us increase our diversity?
It really has helped us increase our diversity. If you look at the past several years, survey of earned doctorates, it's a report that's done by a number of organizations. It's a survey that doctoral students take when they submit their dissertation. VCU consistently has a higher percentage of African American PhD graduates than other institutions across the country. So we're doing well, but we need to certainly do better. We have a thing in Virginia, the Virginia Council of Graduate Schools. And right now, we are working on putting together a program, a leadership development program, a recruitment program, actually a workshop that we hope to have October 2nd, I believe is the date. We're trying to have it right here at VCU if we can get the space. Where we are going to, it's going to be a recruitment fair. We're going to have a panel. We're going to have students from diverse backgrounds presenting their research, current graduate students. We're going to bring in students from diverse backgrounds, all the way from the community college to the four-year college to the major research universities, with the purpose of recruiting students, particularly underrepresented students, to go through the graduate education process, through the PhD, and then to stay here in Virginia to get jobs, whether they're working in a community college, whether they're working in a large Research One university. And so please give me a call, because I would love your input on helping us put together a program like that. Certainly, you will be invited to present your work.
So the extent, let me ask you a question. So how does your your leadership connect with the university? Because I think you could be a valuable resource to us.
I guess I'm wondering if you're asking logistically. We are a student organization that's under.
But how are you? So you have conversations. You might even be looking into numbers and that sort of thing. How do you connect what you want to advance with the university through us? So do you have a chance to maybe connect with Doug, or do you do it program by program or some combination?
Well, we just got approval in January.
Oh,
so this is kind of
fairly new.
Fairly new.
Okay.
So definitely we're trying to build our membership base, but definitely connecting and reaching out to different offices, different deans, and kind of starting that conversation and realizing, asking the questions, because you don't know what you don't know until you ask.
Oh, sure.
So that's kind of definitely coming to this event is something just to, put our questions out there and figure out what resources we have available.
And not particularly by department. I think Ashley and I connected because we see each other often, which is an issue that we've run into, is that Black graduate students are feeling somewhat in isolation. And so that's how it started. But we have been attempting to connect with various academic departments who sort of seek out diversity or who are part of particular programs here at VCU, but not by department. We have a range of students right now in our membership.
That's wonderful. And so as you are new, obviously, in the creation of your unit, but as you think about an agenda, maybe think about this conversation, and then I do think it's important to connect with Doug, and then think about two other things. One is ways in which you can be helpful to the entire university with all programs, maybe not just a subset. And then I'll ask you to think about something else, and that is, would there be some value to recruiting some folks to your group who are not African American and who might become become a part of supporting your mission?
Absolutely.
And connecting the rest of the university that they might connect with, you know what I'm saying?
Yep,
Or the part of the university. But I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Sir.
Afternoon, Dr. Rao. My name is Darrell Fraser, and I'm a assistant professor in teaching at the School of Social Work. Only thing about it is I'm a term faculty. I don't have my. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I don't have my PhD. My question is surrounding what are your thoughts about term faculty and developing them, and perhaps keeping them to maybe one day, maybe any initiatives on helping term faculty acquire their PhD, which then can maybe allow them to maybe be on the tenure track here. So what are your thoughts about that?
So one thought is that term faculty, so to speak, when I say faculty, I'm talking about all of us, whether it's a term faculty member or a member who might be on a tenure pathway or tenured or whatever. So to me, it includes all of us. And then the other thing I would tell you is that my experiences from the past are that a lot of times term faculty appointments are wonderful opportunities when you don't quite have enough in the way of resources or whatever to establish another tenure track faculty position. It may be a wonderful recruitment tool, right? And sometimes you can do that. We had a program that had a name, but basically what it is it was a program where we took students who were ABD, so they were all but their dissertation, so they almost had a PhD, but they hadn't quite finished their dissertation. And so we recruited them to the institution to do some teaching. We also gave them some time to finish their dissertation. And then basically we said, we're both going to sign on to each other when you finish in a more permanent way. It's a wonderful recruitment tool. It worked really, really well for us. And where I was before, the former us, I should say, it was not easy to recruit people from diverse backgrounds to an institution that at the time was not as diverse, frankly. So I think that we ought to be talking to you. So I know Jim, and I had lunch with you, so I know a little bit more about you specifically. But I think as you continue to talk to Jim about, looking at the long term, you ought to be thinking about making sure that there is a pathway, something that really gives you some excitement about being here in the long term at VCU. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Sixto.
Thank you for making yourself available, Mr. President. My thought process was, with diversity comes this opportunity, right, of including a variety of different folks. And one of the things I thought of is, how do we then begin to meet the needs of the folks who we are bringing into the space, one, and two, with the economy and the market changing and innovation and the requirement of critical thinking being so high in order to even survive now, how is it that we're bringing in folks who are going to innovate learning? I know for some students and for some faculty, and some faculties feel limited in the sense of how is it that they can deliver learning in a new, different, innovative way. And I have seen some new classes and some new attempts in the last 2 years, but I wonder how much of that was part of the plan in the diversity.
I think that's a fundamental question, and it's a really important question. It's part of what I think needs to make VCU VCU.
Right.
Right? Because if we aren't sort of ahead, remember in the State of the University address I talked about, we really need to be ahead of the curve. We need to start doing now what other research universities will look at doing later. And I think we can do that. I think we have an opportunity to, with a diverse student population, with an increasingly diverse faculty and staff, to be ahead in terms of thinking about how people learn, how different people learn, and how different people contribute to that learning process. So I think we need to be ahead of that. This is the place to do it, and there's no question that I think that VCU has a bit of an edge. But candidly, I think there are some areas where we're a little bit behind too. And we may have become a little bit complacent. I think there's some opportunities to make some changes there. The key really with human beings of all types, any type, is engagement, right? We all know that people learn more effectively when they're engaged. They learn more effectively when you provide a context in which what you expect someone to learn is readily available and they're able to put it to work. Typically, it's even more valuable when you can put it to work and show how it benefits somebody else. And so ultimately, I think we need to just keep moving in that direction. We're already suited for that to some extent because we have so many professionally centered programs. And that sort of lends itself nicely to that. But I think we need to do this everywhere. In the humanities and sciences, in every discipline, we need to be thinking about how to ensure that our learning process is advancing to the next level.
Thank you. And it gives me another thought. How is it then we begin to engage student as part of the formula and not as an advisory role? So sometimes when we think of youth engagement, it's more of youth empowerment because we ask for advice. But how is it that students can be prepped and be part of the formula as we move forward in growth?
Well, I think we need to do that. And I think we need to get back to some of the really great concepts that I think we engaged students in, probably more in the middle 1960s through the 1970s. There's a lot of student engagement talking about curriculum. Do you remember? Well, you wouldn't remember this. And just so you know, I was little then. But there was a lot of engagement of students. And I think we need to get back to more of that. And so earlier on, you and I talked, and I introduced you to the provost. And I think you two will be getting together. And I think you ought to think about that. That may be an important part of what we do as we look to the next stage of refocusing Quest.
Thank you.
I like your ideas, both of them. I think they make a lot of sense. How we get there, I need to be more thoughtful about. Thank you, Sixto.
So I'm Donna with the libraries, and I think it's great how far VCU's diversity statement has come.
Yes.
And you know that I'm very grateful for that. But I
Yes.
think we as a university need to remember that we can't see diversity. Not every diverse group is obvious. And as we do our hiring, our recruiting of any kind, be it for students, staff, or faculty, we need to keep that in mind, and we've got to be creative in how we view the resumes, because you don't always list your diverse stuff on there. So you might list it in a hidden way, be it a research interest that often might come through or something. But that's part of the problem, is that when I talk with people about diversity, they forget how diverse our diverse statement is. So I think we need a refresher to the university, and I think we need to put our diverse statement more clear. It's very hard to find right now on the website. I don't know if you know how hard it is to find. Yeah.
I'm going
Yes, please do.
to pile on
Yes.
top.
Yeah.
I'm Taryn Witten, and I've been here for 15 years. I'm
Yeah.
a professor here,
Yeah.
and I am VCU's, as far as I know, only out transgender faculty member. And so you can imagine that I'm kind of feeling alone. And I also am the faculty head of an organization called Gender Safe, which is attempting to try to help VCU to become more amicable to all kinds of gender expression. And one of the challenges is, for example, in the admissions material, there's no LGBT pictures. There's nothing to indicate in any material that we are open to the LGBT community and that we support them. And I hear all of this stuff about what's going on in the dorms with the transgender members and all of that. And yet it's so difficult to make those kinds of changes on the students' behalf.
Sure.
I don't know what to do. I've met with the admissions office about it. I've met with Wanda. I mean, we all know each other. John knows me. This is something, as I said, I don't look diverse, and yet I very much am. So, and there are, and not just for students, but for faculty. I mean, we think, okay, she's trans or she's gay, well, we'll put her in social work or we'll put her in women's studies. But in fact, there are many LGBT physicists out there, and we need to be able to make this university amicable to all aspects of the diversity.
I agree completely. Yes. So I'm glad that both of you stood up, and I'm glad that both of you talked, because I don't know how many times you listened to me specifically say all of the ways in which.
Yes.
And I'm trying to use this podium to remind everyone, because I think people do tend to get lost sometimes in a single aspect of a thought process or discussion. So you provided a much better opportunity by your standing there than having me just say it again and again and again. That I am talking, without question, about embracing human beings all human beings and embracing all of the ways in which human beings are different. And so you're right. There is not a very broad conversation about transgender.
Any gender issue, any gender difference.
I'm just using
Yeah.
me because I
Yeah,
know,
you're
but I mean,
saying-
there are all kinds of gender
Yeah.
expressions, you know.
And I think that other than us both being so active with the LGBT issues, we have to remember all the diverse groups that aren't easily represented. They're not a checkbox on any form. They
Correct.
may not need to be, but we need to be addressing them on a broader case and
In-
remembering they're part of the fabric of the diversity that we're seeking.
And if not at a university, then where?
Right.
Then where?
And so please put the diversity statement out there
Okay.
on the website. Make sure the faculty, staff, and the students are aware of the layers and what those things mean. Maybe they don't know what it means, so maybe we need to do training
Got it.
on each and every part of that. Maybe they don't understand why military is a part of diversity. And it's a huge part, and there's a lot of reasons.
is.
People don't understand why some of these things are listed.
Okay.
And it's about a teaching opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it. Yes.
Good afternoon. We've heard from faculty as well as students, and I would like to also ask about any efforts that are being made with our classified staff group.
Yes. Yes.
Because I think what we see anecdotally when we talk to each other, whether that's in staff senate or just among colleagues, is that we're a very diverse group with respect to color and other less obvious ways that have been addressed. However, not so diverse in the senior staff positions. So again, anecdotally, we've seen that we have people of color in the lower pay grades, not so many in the higher pay grades. I'd like to know, A, if that has ever been quantified. Is that a real thing? And B, if it has not been, can we commission that so that we can start to address any, if any, inequities? Thank you.
It is inherently part of what I have included in my charge, and that's the section in the charge where Bill Decatur specifically is focused. But I think we could be more diverse in every category. Are we doing better in some areas than others? No question we're doing better in some areas than others. But Wanda, do you want to specifically say anything with regard to where we're headed in terms of looking at staff
We are
and
looking at
senior
that
staff
as
in
an
particular?
assessment of looking at, because one aspect with the diversity plan was looking at pay grades 5 or higher, and looking at who were in these pay grades that are lower. But we will be working with Bill Decatur to look at those particular numbers. And I think in the new refocusing quest for distinction, it also looks at staff as it relates to promotion too.
right.
So there will be an address of that, and we will be having some opportunities to engage staff in this dialogue.
And I just want to be clear, everywhere where I can say and identify staff, I do. But where I don't, it is one of two things. It is where there is a teaching or research focus where, I talk about faculty because of that context in which I'm speaking, or it may be that I just slipped. And so staff have been very good about reminding me and letting me know when I should have said included staff. But I won't tell you that you can't possibly be out of mind, because the largest component of our team is staff at VCU. So it's like 20,000 people. So, you can't imagine that I don't have tremendous appreciation for our staff. I do, and I've said repeatedly, and we'll say it one more time, and again after this, that the staff senate has been an incredible leadership group, and I'm very grateful for your leadership. And I hope you'll continue, and I hope you'll continue to stay in touch with me and let me know ways in which we can advance the staff mission, if you will.
Thank you, and we have noticed a much greater deal of inclusion in, when you spoke from the podium today, you always had faculty and staff, and that's appreciated. I think there are some more deeply seated structures that sort of keep the cycle in place. For example, if in fact our staff leadership positions are not as diverse as we think, those are usually the people who hire the new ones to come in. So, you know, we don't necessarily hire staff by committee sometimes, but, you know, oftentimes it's just on an individual basis. So, you know, perhaps there are some specific things we could look at.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ashir?
Good afternoon.
Hi, Ashir. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I actually debated for quite some time. You know, my father used to repeat something, you know, it's better to keep your mouth closed and let people think you are a fool than open it and reveal all doubt. So I may be proving a point here, and I apologize for that in advance. Just a couple of notes. First, I think you and your cabinet, the board, should be applauded for actually using science to inform diversity and inclusion, particularly as it relates to students, by basically foregoing more cognitive measures such as the SAT or scholastic aptitude measures such as SAT, and begin looking at non-cognitive predictors of academic success that actually demonstrate student persistence beyond their first year. And so I think using the science to inform what we're doing in terms of diversity and inclusion is a high note for the university, and I'll be very interested to see how it unfolds. I also would like to issue a challenge to the cabinet. And the challenge is to really look beyond diversity but to consider inclusion. If we look at the evidence shows that diversity really isn't linked to excellence as how we defined it as a university. We define excellence as a university by looking at the 9 CMUPs. Diversity really has no correlation with that when we look at the top 50 universities. In fact, there's somewhat of an inverse relationship, meaning that the less diverse an institution is, the higher their ranking is on the 9 CMUPs. However, if we begin to look at inclusion in terms of how people work together, in terms of how faculty and staff come together, in terms of team science, et cetera, and then how they solve problems in communities, build programs that are relevant to communities as well as people who are interested, those are the things that really matter. So when you all are putting together your plans, yeah, diversity is critically important. Representational diversity, compositional diversity is critically important. But it's really about building the context. It's really about building the infrastructure and building the culture within these departments, within these programs, that ultimately diversity would be self-sustaining. So when we have a question about, you know, how do we recruit an African-American female? How do we retain an African-American female? And we don't have the most clear or concise plan in place, then we will know what to do because we'll have a plan and a program that's currently in place that will support the type of scholarship that that person does, and we'll know offhand what the impact will be. If we're talking about recruiting underrepresented minority graduate students, well, we know the difference between when undergraduate students pick universities, they pick place and they pick prestige. But oftentimes when graduate students choose universities, they pick program, they pick people, and they pick problem that they're going to solve. And so it's both types of fruit, but they're apples and oranges. And then we can begin to develop programs, and we can develop, you know, more systematic programs that actually encourage not just diversity, but inclusion in solving these very important problems. I think one of the reasons why I stayed here at VCU and why I'll continue to stay here at VCU is because how this university is basically, you know, a premier urban public research university, which means that a lot of what we do translates into how the community gets better in terms of how we become better, how we optimize human health, how we optimize performance. And I think the challenge is for us to make our programs here at the university actually relate to what we're doing in the community. And if we do that in a community that's 51% African American, all sorts of diversity in all different areas, then our research becomes relevant, our faculty become relevant, our staff that support the faculty and students also become relevant, and we create an environment that is not just diverse, but is also inclusive. And so I would just like, if I may, as a lowly faculty member at VCU, challenge the cabinet to not think as diversity as an outcome, but think of diversity as a value that should be interwoven into any of the 9 CMUPs that we wish to aspire to become better at. And so I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity. I think you should be commended. Your staff has done a wonderful job in terms of advancing diversity. And I'm looking forward to being here a number of years to see how it pans out. Thank
And
you.
I'm glad you didn't listen to your dad.
We want to thank President Rao. Let's give President Rao a hand of applause for engaging in us in this conversation with diverse perspectives and viewpoints, and I think that's what a university is about. It's not really a university, it's a multi-university. And what we want to do is to continue this conversation, but to move from rhetoric to action. And the president has given us a charge, and we have to develop strategic action plans that will have accountability mechanisms. So on this Thursday, the 19th, from 1 to 2:30 in this building, in the forum room, we will have a listening session, and it will be on the topic of faculty of color. We ask you to come out to engage in the dialogue around opportunities and challenges that we look at and strategies for moving us forward. On next Monday, the 23rd, we will have another listening session, Diversity and Inclusion at VCU, and that will also be in the Commons in the forum room. We need your input. We need to vet these things through you. It cannot be a top-down. It has to be all of us involved in this process. We will probably not agree on everything, but that is the nature of higher education, and that's the nature of success. And how we move this forward will need your input. Partnering and collaboration is key, and we think that we can achieve those goals that we have set for ourselves. So thank you for coming out. Thank you again, President Rao, for this opportunity. And Blue, you have something else?
I was just wondering, as we were sitting here, will there be any opportunities to take a look at this plan?
Oh, yes.
In draft format?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Those who have special interest?
Absolutely. We have a committee, the Council for Inclusive Excellence and Equity, will look at the plan, and it has a very diverse makeup. The provost and the senior vice president for health sciences and myself will be working on this plan. It has to go through a vetting process of the community.
So one last thing, let's all thank Wanda for bringing us together.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of the afternoon.